We're waiting for one other person. Normally we start right at 7 o'clock, but if you'll just give us a few minutes and then we'll begin as soon as they arrive or as soon as we find out if they're on their way. Thank you. It's interesting. As good as my far vision is, with just this lens, not even this one yet, close up is kind of a chancy. Like, I printed things real big only because, and I said, do you think I'll need to wear glasses when this is all done? And they go, you may want cheaters for reading. Yeah. Is that him coming in? Hi, James. We'll call the meeting to order. I'm Tom Prickett, the chairperson of the Zoning Hearing Board. In the front is our stenographer, Kim Stranisa. From left to right, we have James Jones, who's the secretary of the Zoning Hearing Board. To my immediate right is the vice chairman, Kara Sheridan. To my left is our legal counsel, Chris Volz, who is associated with the firm Tucker Ahrensberg. And to my far left and to your right is Jack King, who's serving as zoning director in her absence. She's currently on leave. Correct. If anyone who's providing information or giving testimony this evening would be so kind as to stand to be sworn in. Thank you. I'd look for a motion for the approval of the minutes, the most recent meeting, which was February 20th, 2023.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have no old business. We do have new business, and I'll refer to application number 2023-0002 in the person of Jerry A. Mazza. It's an appeal of a notice of violation. The location is 162 County Line Road in Bridgeville, Pennsylvania. The township alleges that there is an illegal occupancy with an unpermitted structure serving as residential dwelling and at least one commercial business operating out of the property. The township bears the responsibility or the burden of showing that there's a commercial business on the property, and then Mr. Mazza bears the burden of showing that it's a legal non-conforming use. Given that background, I would defer to Attorney Gretchen Moore on behalf of the township.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Zoning Hearing Board. Gretchen Moore on behalf of Cecil Township. As you know, we do have the burden in this appeal of a notice of violation, so I'll begin with our case in chief, and I'd like to call Mr. Jerry Mazza.
What's up? Do I want to answer her questions, or what do you have?
Yes, I'll be asking you questions. Let me just get situated.
Thank you.
Exhibit binder.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As I ask you some questions, I'm going to refer to the here, and I'll point you at the appropriate class.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mazza. Can you please state your name for the record?
This is Jerry Mazza, M-A-Z-Z-A.
Tonight, we're going to be talking about what I'll call the subject parcel. For the record, that parcel is number 140-11-00-00-0001 with an address of 162 County Line Road. Okay,
Correct.
I'll refer to that as the subject parcel. Mr. Mazza, you own the subject parcel, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you first acquired the subject parcel in 1971?
that sounds about right.
Okay, thank you. And the subject parcel is currently zoned R1 low-density residential zoning?
Correct.
Okay. And it's always been R1, correct?
I'm sorry?
It has always been R1
Yes, as far as I know.
since you acquired the property in 1971, correct?
Right.
Okay. Now, we're going to look at a current Google aerial map, and I'm going to take the board and you as a witness through several maps. We're going to start with the most current, and then I'm going to go back and look at some older maps. So if you could, please take a look at Exhibit 2 in that binder. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Exhibit 2 is an aerial that I downloaded from Google Maps. It has a date in the upper left-hand corner of June of 2022. Do you see that? The date's in the upper left-hand corner.
No, there's nothing in the upper left hand. Do I have this thing upside down? Bottom. No, there's nothing on here. Oh, bottom left-hand corner. Bottom right-hand corner.
Nope, on this one, it's the top left.
You look, oh, right there.
Yeah, it's, oh, sorry,
Holy
it's
moly,
tiny.
I'm as blind as I am deaf. Oh, you can't even read it.
Yeah, it's tiny.
I see it.
It's June of 2022.
Okay. Yeah, okay, it's current. That's it.
Okay. And that was going to be my next question. Does this image accurately reflect the subject property and surrounding areas currently?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we could, let's label each of these buildings because we're going to reference them throughout the hearing. So I'm going to start with the one on the leftmost side of the page, okay?
Left.
On the leftmost side of the page. So we'll work from left to right.
Okay.
Okay, and if this works, could we call them Building A at the leftmost, and then moving to the right, Building B, Building C, and Building D?
Right.
Okay? There's another building to the right of Building D, but that building is located in Allegheny County, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so buildings A, B, C, and D are located on the subject parcel in Cecil, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. Now, Mr. Mazza, could you please, for each of the buildings, could you identify what the building is and what activities are taking place in that building? And we can start with Building A.
Sure. Building A, these are all pole barns. They're all board and batten siding, plywood and shingle roofs. They're all pretty much match each other. And Building A is rented by a cement contractor and a landscaper.
What is the name of the cement contractor and landscaper?
Rob Angle. It's Curbscape is the name of his company.
That's the landscaper?
Pardon me?
That is the landscaper?
Yes.
Okay, and then you said there was a concrete contractor?
Oh, I'm sorry. He's a concrete contractor. The landscaper, he just has a name, Gordon Sternell. He's not a company, he's just a guy. That Gordon Sternell's been keeping his lawnmowers and his equipment in my barn for 23 years.
Okay, so to be clear, Building A, Curbscape operates out of there?
Curbscape, yeah,
Okay, as well as is it Gordon Sternelli?
right.
Okay, and he's been doing that, you said 23 years, since 2000?
Whatever that comes out to.
Okay,
He wasn't always in that building, he moved around a little bit. This is a long journey. This has evolved over many, many years. So, but right now, you asked me who's in that building, that's who's in that building.
Great, okay. And what does Curbscapers do out of that building?
He has his equipment there, and he's a cement contractor. He pours concrete, driveways, he stamps concrete, curbs, retaining walls, whatever.
So he does storage in that building?
He just stores his equipment in there.
Okay. Does he have an office in that building?
I'm sorry?
Does he have an office in that building? Okay. And how about Mr. Sternelli? What does he do in Building A currently?
He just has his lawnmowers and weed eaters and his equipment. He doesn't come around that often, but he's been there forever. He cuts my grass.
Okay. So he stores his landscape equipment?
Correct.
Okay. And Curbscaper, how long have they been operating, storing in Building A?
Man, I don't know. You got me there.
More than 10 years?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so less than 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. How about Building B?
Building B, Curbscape rents half of that building. And then there's another contractor, Ed Angel, angler. I have this stuff in my phone if it's really important. I have the names and the spellings of them, but I didn't know you were going to ask me these questions, so I'm not, I don't have it right at the top of my head. But that's who's in. Curbscape rents 2/3 of that building also, and there's another gentleman that has a dump truck, and I don't even know what he has in there. They don't come around too often.
Okay, is it Angle?
Angle?
Okay, and does he have a business?
No,
Okay, what does he do in Building B?
I don't know.
Does he rent space off of you?
He rents that space.
Okay. How much space does he rent in Building
A
B?
third of that building.
Okay, and how big's that building, approximately? How big
how big?
approximately?
40 by 72. Both those buildings are identical.
Okay. So he rents about a third of that space?
Correct. One
And
third.
he stores equipment there?
Yes. I don't know whether it's equipment, but he comes once in a while and he has an SUV, he switches them around, that's all. He don't come around too often.
So some vehicles he
Yeah,
stores there?
Yeah.
Okay. More than one vehicle?
Possibly 2 vehicles.
Does anything else take place in Building B in terms of activity?
No.
And how long has Mr. Engel been renting space off of you?
He's less than 10 years too. They
Okay.
haven't been there that long.
Okay, and how about Building C? What
Building
activities
C,
are taking place there?
It's all individual garages, and I don't know, there's 10 different people have their cars in there. That's like cars and junk.
How many spots for cars?
There's 20 spaces in that building. But sometime one person will rent 3 spaces. They used to be all horse trailers in there, but those days are gone.
Okay, so you have approximately 20 spaces in Building C, and you rent those spaces out?
Right,
Okay. And you rent them all to different individuals or businesses?
correct.
Is it both? To
No
people?
business, no business.
Okay, so these are rentals of car
Yeah, they're
spaces?
a lot of car collectors, most of them are from Cecil Township, and some people, they just store junk. They disappear, you never see them again.
And everyone who utilizes Building C, they pay you rent
Yeah,
in exchange to use the space?
correct.
And how long have these kinds of activities been going on in Building C?
That's less than 10 years too.
Okay, and the final building we were talking about is Building D. What
Yeah.
activities are going on in Building D?
That's my building.
What does
I
that
have my
mean?
workshop in there, auto repair shop. I have pictures of that we can look at later. And I have what I call my man cave. It's a nice little area. And when I took my house and I fixed that up, and it's pretty nice. It could be considered living quarters, and I applied for an occupancy permit, but that didn't go too far. So we'll see what I can do about you know, I want to rectify this situation. I came here to straighten it out, and hopefully we can do that.
Okay, so let me just ask a couple questions. Let's start with the man cave. That's actually, it's a residential living quarters, correct?
Yeah, it's living quarters.
Okay, and you reside there?
Not that often, but I do stay there a lot. You know, I have a lady friend in Bethel, and I stay there. But I work in that workshop all the time. So I'm around. I own the place. I'm there all the time. I'm only here 6 months. I spent 6 months in Florida. I come up here, and I don't know. I love it. It's great. Got a beautiful place there.
Okay, so when you're not in Florida, you spend time, some of which you're spending time up here at your back man cave, I
Exactly.
think you call it, okay? And sometimes you're staying with a friend in Bethel,
Exactly.
okay. But you do stay overnight in Building
Yeah.
D,
Yeah.
okay. And you also have an auto repair shop there?
No, it's a private shop.
Right,
Just
okay.
for me, it's a hobby. I like to tinker. I can't stop working.
Okay, and you mentioned the turnpike taking your house. So there was, when the turnpike came through, there was a eminent domain took place, and you were compensated for your home that was somewhere else on this property. Is
Yeah.
that fair?
Yeah, they took my house, my indoor riding arena, my horse barn, they took everything. I was gonna explain all that to you, but I'll answer your questions as you wish, you know, whatever you want.
Okay. and-
That's what they took, 18 acres. You know, the house I built, indoor riding arena, 16-stall horse barn, had living quarters in it. It was devastating. And they pay you what they think it's worth, but you don't get compensated for your aggravation, your disappointment, your expense. Another thing that you don't get compensated for, non-compensatory income. You lose the money, too bad. We're not responsible for that. I took a beating. It took me 3 years to recover from when they took my property, and I had to start over in my 70s to get back to where I was in my 40s and 50s. And it was daunting.
What year was the eminent domain?
Oh, man, you're testing me. It
Approximately.
wasn't that long ago.
Yeah,
Well, I was about 70 years old. I'm 76.
so about 6 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that was the finale. When they sat in my living room and told me they were going to take some of my property for the Southern Beltway, I was 60 years old. This thing drug out for 15 years. It was devastating. I mean, it just never went away. And because I was a partial take, income-producing property, they're doing all 100% takes. We're taking all the houses. I come back from Florida, hey, what are you going to do? I'm trying to keep this property up, maintain it. It's an operating equestrian training center. It was a beautiful piece of real estate. Working, but I'm maintaining it, and I'm paying the taxes, and I'm paying the insurance, and I'm fixing it, keeping it real nice so I'll get top dollar. That was a joke. And then they send their appraisers around, and they throw out a lowball number, and if you don't like it, well, you can appeal, just the way you want to spend your retirement. So it didn't go real well.
So how long have you been residing, at least part of the year, in Building D?
Oh, well, not that long.
Less than 5 years?
About 5 years. I don't, you know, I'm not there that much. I don't keep that much track. I'm running around, you know, like I said, my lady friend has a nice place in Bethel. But when I'm in that shop, I hang out to that property, and I go back and forth. And then I'm in Florida.
Right, and when you're there, you do stay
Oh,
overnight?
yeah. Oh, it's
Okay.
nice. I got it fixed up nice. I had all the furniture and everything from my house. I had all pictures on the wall. It's like, oh, it's beautiful. I like things to be nice.
Now, Mr. Mazza, are there bathrooms in any of these four
Yeah,
buildings?
there's a bathroom in the man cave, and there's a bathroom in the workshop. That septic system has been put in many, many years ago when I planned on putting this shop into the building. It was put in by Jack Fleer. He wasn't one of the best, he was the best septic system guy in Cecil Township, no longer around, but what a great guy. That system works great.
When was so you have on-lot septic for Building D, correct?
Is it what, septic?
It's on-lot
Oh,
septic?
yeah, it's right there, right.
Okay, there's no public sewer that goes up
No
there?
public sewer.
Okay, and when was the on-lot septic system installed?
Oh, man, that was a long time ago. That was one of the first things I did. But then I never got the workshop put in until many years later. And then the same with the man cave, I didn't put that in till later, but I had the septic system in the bathroom put in right away.
Approximately when was that?
Oh, man. I've had this property for 51 years. It's hard for me to say. That building was built 40 years ago. It was probably 35 years.
Building D,
Building A, B, C, Building D.
right. And you said you started residing in it recently, within the past
Yeah,
5
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
I
you-
had to move my office. I got my desk in there, my file cabinets. I have to have a place to put my stuff. I didn't have a house anymore, and I need, I need a home base. That's my home base right there.
But you installed these bathrooms
Oh, a long time
a
ago.
long time ago, okay?
I mean, there
past
was
20
no man,
years?
there was no cave. It was a dirt floor. One section was concrete. I put the bathroom right there.
And you had Mr. Fleer install a septic
Yes, sir.
system.
Ma'am.
Did you, are you aware of whether you went through the Washington County Sewage Council to get a permit?
No, I was told way back then, if you had more than 10 acres, you didn't have to do any of that. We put the septic system in. I just make things happen. I get it done. I don't want to start trouble, but when you have 25 acres, they say, if you have more than 10 acres, you need a permit. Because I got a permit in Allegheny County when I built my house. I went through misery with them. And then people had told me, well, if you have more than 10 acres, you don't need a permit. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. But no, I didn't go through any channels. I just put the system in. It was put in right, just like the buildings. They were built to code. But no, I didn't do that.
Okay, so the answer is no permit from Washington County Sewage Council?
No.
And no permit from Cecil Township related to the on-lot sewage system?
No.
Okay. Okay, so let's look at a couple more pictures.
Sure.
Okay. Let's start with Exhibit 3, if you could turn there.
Exhibit 3. Wow, that's a long time ago.
So on this exhibit, the date is on the bottom right, and it has a date of April 1993. Do you see that?
Bottom right, I see it. All right. That sounds good.
Okay, so is that an accurate picture of the property at that time, around 1993?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, and the two buildings that we see there in 1993 are buildings C and D, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, 1993. Wow, look at that.
When was, if you can recall, when was building C and building D erected?
Huh, I can't recall. Kidding me? I can barely remember a little bit of yesterday.
Did you either build or did you have someone build?
Oh, yeah, they were built by
Built-
contractors. The first two buildings were built by Husky Built, and the second two buildings were built by the same contractor that built my indoor riding arena, Al Willis, and that's all.
Okay, so building C and D, the one we're looking at in this exhibit, you
were-
hired someone to
Yeah,
build those
they were-
buildings
They were built by Husky Built.
Okay.
Was the name of the company.
after you purchased the property in 1971?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
You know more about this property than I do.
a little bit of research. Okay, so, Mr. Mazza, in 2002, you obtained a building permit for a pole barn on the property. Does that sound about right?
2002.
Yep, and you can look at Exhibit 7 to refresh your recollection.
Oh, let's see here. What's this here? Oh, this is the pole, this is 40 by 72, yeah. Is that the last one I had built?
Well, I'll take you through those, but let's focus on Exhibit 7 right now. That's a building permit application dated October 22nd of 2022, or I'm sorry, 2002?
Right here, yeah.
Okay. Is this your building permit application for
Apparently,
a hay storage pole barn?
yeah.
Okay. And you say there under number 6 on the application that the structure was to be used for hay storage, right?
Say that again?
Question number 6 on the permit application.
Oh, I see. Yeah, hay storage, right.
Okay. And you filled out this application, correct?
Right.
Okay, and that's your signature at the bottom. correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So the purpose of this building was supposed to be for hay storage, is that fair?
Correct.
Okay.
And equipment, you know, when you have a farm, you keep all different kind of things in your building. You're not sure what all you're gonna put in, but you go get the building permit, and you write down something that makes sense. Hay storage, that's what I kept. I kept hay, and I kept wood chips, but nevertheless,
Okay, so
fine.
let's take a look at Exhibit 4 now.
or,
So we were just looking at the building permit
oh yeah,
from 2002. Okay, now let's look at Exhibit 4, which at the bottom right-hand side, you can see a date of May of 2003.
got it.
Okay, so by 2003, it appears to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you had erected that pole barn that you had applied for with the building permit in 2002, because there's a new building now to the left of Building C and D, and that's the building we identified as Building B. Is that right?
Building C,
The new hay storage pole barn
oh,
on this exhibit,
oh yeah, A, B, C, okay.
it's,
That's the one that's 100 feet long.
right, so let's just be clear again. Originally, we talked about buildings A, B, C, and D.
Yeah,
Then we just looked at the 1993 picture where we saw buildings C and D.
yeah,
And then you had applied for a permit in 2002. And now this image, Exhibit 4, is 2003. And there's a third building on the property now, which looks to me in the same location as what we're calling Building B. Is that accurate?
yes.
Okay. And Exhibit 4, is that an accurate depiction of the property around the time frame of 2003?
Yeah, must be. It's a picture.
Okay. And that new building, as we just went through, that new building was to the left of the first two. That's the new building that was erected.
Right.
Okay. Sometime after 2002 and before this date on 2003. Okay. Now let's take a look. If you can go back to Exhibit 7.
7,
On the third page of Exhibit 7,
third page.
there is what's called a final inspection occupancy report for miscellaneous accessory structures and permits.
What about it?
Do you see that?
Inspection, occupancy. What is it? Well, I don't even know what this is.
Okay, this is from Cecil Township, and this is for occupancy, and you see it says type of structure, a storage barn. Do you
Oh,
see
yeah.
that?
Okay. Type of structure, storage barn. 40 by 72. This the last one I built?
This is dated
Oh,
2002.
2002.
Okay, so this would be a Building B, right?
Okay,
Does that all make sense?
that makes sense.
Okay, so Building B, you got a building permit in 2002. It looks like it went up by early 2003, and then there was an occupancy permit for a storage barn for Building B.
Yeah, I guess so. It's right here.
Okay, got it.
I didn't even remember doing this. But it's my writing.
Okay, thank you. Now let's take a look at Exhibit 8.
8,
This is a different building permit application.
yeah, I didn't,
This one's dated 2004.
2004, storage barn. Wow, I thought, yeah, I see it. I got it.
Okay, did you fill out this application as well, Mr. Mazza?
I signed it, but I didn't, that's not my printing, but I signed it. That's my signature.
Okay. Do you recall applying for a building permit for a new building around 2004?
Yeah.
Okay,
I do.
okay, and,
Finally, I remembered something.
That's good, that's good, we appreciate that. Okay, so you applied for a building permit for an additional building on the property in 2004. And if we take a look at Exhibit 5,
Exhibit 5, where's that? Oh, over here. Moly. Yeah, what about it?
okay, let's look at the date on this one. The date is back in the upper left-hand side. It's dated 4 of 2005.
Yep.
And at this point now, we see all 4 buildings, again, A, B, C, and D.
Right.
And A is the newest building,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the building application from 2004, after you received that, and sometime before April of 2005, you erected Building A.
Correct.
Okay. And I can tell you that there is no occupancy permit for Building A. The only occupancy permit the township has is the one I showed you for Building B.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
You didn't know you needed an occupancy permit, or?
Oh, I didn't know I didn't have one. I didn't know anything about it. I just, I built the building. I've been using it for all these years. I don't even remember getting the other occupancy permit.
Okay,
But I see it, I see they filled it out.
okay. You certainly independently do not have any other occupancy permits for any of these buildings, correct?
No.
Okay. Okay, just a couple more pictures to kind of put together this timeline. Let's take a look at Exhibit 6.
I thought once you got the building permit and you built the building, you were done. Okay.
If we look at Exhibit 6, this point, the date is in the upper left-hand corner again. It's July of 2010. It's super tiny.
Right,
I do apologize for that.
That's okay, I see it, yeah.
Okay, is this an accurate depiction of your property around that time in 2010?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, those 2 additional buildings that are on the right-hand side of the image,
Yeah.
those are over the county line, and those are in Allegheny County, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Maas, if we could take a look at Exhibit 9.
Exhibit 9. Yep.
If you could familiarize yourself and let the board know, is this your Facebook page?
Yeah.
Okay, and are these things that you posted on your Facebook page?
This one, yeah, this here is, yeah.
Okay,
That wasn't that, I don't think that was too long ago.
okay.
But there's a date, May 8th, well, it doesn't have the year. That's unusual for me to have an empty space, but apparently I ran this ad to rent it.
Okay, so there's just a couple things I wanted to ask you about, and I actually don't think it's in dispute after hearing your testimony, but if we look at the 4th page of these Facebook posts.
4th page?
Mm-hmm.
What are we looking at here?
Okay, so the second paragraph, for lack of a better word, or posting, where it says Jerry Mazza at the top, you state there, "The Bat Cave is still there. It's my summer home, and I love living there in spite of the Southern Beltway going right through my property," correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's not in dispute. I think you said that earlier today. You call it your Bat Cave, and
Yeah.
you do stay there when you are up here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I do love it.
And on the first page of that posting, I think you said you were surprised to see that you had an open car slot, but you were advertising for one of your open car rental slots on your property. Is that fair?
Garage, yeah,
Okay. And you were marketing that for $75 a month for one spot.
correct.
Okay.
That's what they rent for right now. Very rarely do I ever have to run an ad for a storage space. If I do get an empty garage, it's very rare. I send a text message to the other people that rent off me, say, "Hey, man, I got an empty garage. If you know anybody, it's gone." They rent them.
Got it. And that's in Building C.
That way I'm not going outside the circle of people that I know. That's in Building C.
Okay. Okay, and I just had a couple more questions about the contractors that lease space from you. I think you mentioned one was Curb Space,
Curbscape.
Curbscape, thank you. Do you rent space to an entity called Englert?
Angler. Robbie, yeah.
Are you familiar with
Well,
a,
I got an angle and I got an angler.
are you familiar with a business called Englert?
Angler Landscaping.
Okay,
That's Eric. Let me look.
okay, take your time.
I'll get the spelling for you. That way we won't be confused. I got an angle, an angler, and an angle. Englert, Englert. Okay, that's Eric. He plows my snow.
Okay, what is the nature of his
He's
business?
a landscaper. He
Got
does
it.
all my shrubbery, he trims the shrubbery, he mulches the shrubbery, and he plows the snow. And Gordon Sternell, he cuts the grass.
Does Englert, the business entity, do they rent space from you?
Yes,
Okay, and for the purposes of storage for equipment and other materials?
that's all.
Okay. How about an entity called NOS, Knaus? Are you familiar with a business called NOS?
No.
Okay. Are there any other contractors who you lease space to who you haven't identified yet?
No. I'm trying to think. Pete Ripnick, he shares his space with Gordon Sternell. So when I say Gordon Sternell, he rents the garage and then he has this other guy splits it with him. So I didn't bring him up, but
What's
he's
the-
not even a business. He's just a guy that cuts grass. He doesn't even have a name for a business. But he
Okay.
has lawnmowers in there and he goes in and out.
Beyond storing materials, what other activities take place on this property? For example, is there dumping of materials by these various entities?
Nothing.
No dumping?
Well, they dump their grass clippings in their mulch, and then when they get a clean fill, that's how I reclaimed a lot of this particular part of the property. Was all glass. It was a dump at one time. So as we get clean fill, we dump and we fix it up and we make the property usable because it was always real steep and a lot of trees, and that's all. No garbage. I'm very strict about that. No litter, very strict about that. And nothing sits outside, very strict about that. No scaffolding, no wheelbarrows, no junk, I can't stand it. And they know it. So
Okay.
everything that's kept on that property is kept inside the buildings. Unless you have some brick or block or something that pertains to your business like that cement guy. But no trailers, because I've had it happen. So you can't leave that trailer there, man. This place would be like a junkyard. So I don't allow that.
Okay, but when it comes to dumping, you did say you allow various contractors to dump because you're using it to fill up the property.
Just the people that keep their equipment there. Nobody from the outside's allowed to come in and dump stuff, no.
Okay, so beyond grass clippings, what else are they dumping? Concrete?
Concrete and clean fill, dirt.
Mr. Mazza, is anything else taking place on the property from a business standpoint that we haven't talked about?
We haven't touched on it, just storage. It's all storage. Nothing else going on. Very little of that. If the people that rented those garages with the cars came in here, I wouldn't recognize them. They never come around. Very little activity for as many buildings as I have. It's the same 4 or 5 people come in and out. And they're only there in the summertime because the landscapers don't cut grass in the winter and the concrete contractor doesn't work in the winter. I go to Florida in the winter. The car collectors don't come around in the summer, much less the winter. There's practically abandoned piece of property for 6 months. And then in the summertime, there's a handful of people that they are active, and that's it.
Is anyone there managing the property in the winter?
No, but if I need something, I call my brother-in-law, or I call whoever, Rob, the curbscape guy, he's a good friend of mine. I don't have any problem. I have surveillance cameras everywhere.
Okay.
There's no problems. There's nothing to worry about.
Now, Mr. Mazza, you don't have a certificate of pre-existing non-conforming use from the township, do you?
No.
Okay. And I can tell you from the township's standpoint, the only documents of permits are the ones I showed you today. So the only thing that was found in the file related to your property are the ones we showed you today.
Yeah.
Sitting here, you don't possess any other permits that I haven't shown you today.
I didn't possess these ones. These
Okay.
are the ones you have.
So these were a
And
surprise,
when I
okay.
got building permits for all 4 of those buildings. I can remember setting them on my file cabinet. I never displayed them because they're supposed to display and point them towards a road. There was no road. But I got permits because every time I built a building, my taxes went up, so somebody knew I was building them. But if you don't have a record of them, I don't know what to tell you. But they were built by professional contractors, and I got permits for them.
And the activities that we talked about today, you talked about the duration of some of the activities that were taking place with the particular businesses. What is the longest, the oldest business that you've had that's been there for the longest amount of time?
That would be that concrete guy. Curbscape?
Okay,
Well, yeah. Even that landscaper, been there for 23 years. He's really not a company. You know, he owns a business in Bridgeville, and he cuts grass. And he's kept his lawnmowers there for 23 years, and he cuts my grass. But that wouldn't be a business, not like Curbscape. Curbscape's a business. Got the
Okay, and I-
signs on a truck and the whole deal.
and I think you testified earlier that they've been renting space from you for about 10 years, give or take.
Probably less than 10 years, but we'll go with that. That's good.
Okay. I think, Mr. Mazza, that's all the questions I have for you. I do have other witnesses, and then you certainly have an opportunity to put on whatever case you want to put on as well.
Thank you. I don't have any witnesses to call, but I'd like to tell you a little backstory about the property so you would have an idea how it evolved from where it started 51 years ago to where it ended up today.
Sure, and I'll let the board, if you'd like me to go through my witnesses first and then turn it over to Mr. Mazza for his case.
Let's do it in that order, please.
Okay, then we'll do that, Mr. Mazzo. After I put on a couple additional witnesses, you'll then have an opportunity to say your piece in your case.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call Mr. Jay Lewis next.
Jay Lewis, 201 County Line Road. I don't think we need to go down through like a line of questioning. I mean, I think Jerry was pretty honest. You know, I mean, I'm just here to, you know, talk about the traffic on the road. You know, we have 2 little girls now. Man, the landscapers coming in and out, the concrete guys flying around that bend to get to your place. That's the only reason why I'm here. You know, we've been seeing a lot more lately, and I think that's possibly because we're sharing a cul-de-sac now. It might always been there, you know, I don't know, but, you know, since the trees are gone, since the road is gone, since we're sharing a road, man, traffic's been a lot, and that's why I'm here.
Okay.
So, yep.
And that's great. If I could just point your attention in that book to Exhibit 13, I just want to show the board, where you live in proximity to the property.
Okay. Yes, the red would be me.
Okay, so on Exhibit 13, there is a home that is circled in red. That's your residence?
Yes. So if you see how that driveway, it'd be, Jerry's new driveway, the headlights are straight at my living room. And, whenever they talk about, people coming in and out, it's just not during the day. It's at nighttime, it's weekends, it's all the time. And, we have two little girls at home. When we're up with them in the middle of the night, you don't know who's out there. So, and usually they're bigger trucks, diesels, something loud, pulling trailers, equipment, things bouncing around.
So I think you made an interesting point that's, I think, important for the board. The County Line Road, where there's that circle kind of right near your house, and then a road continues on and leads back to the subject property. That road is a newer creation, is that fair?
Correct.
Okay, do you know when that road was put there?
2019? Yeah, 2019-ish.
Okay. And when did you move into your home, Mr. Lewis?
August 2016.
Okay. And since you've been in your home, have you noticed an increase or decrease in the frequency of these various trucks and vehicles heading back to the subject property?
I think there's been an increase, but I was never impacted prior to the cul-de-sac. I didn't have vehicles, pulling into me or out where my house is. So I think there's an increase.
And let's just take a very quick look at Exhibits 14 and 15. We can start with Exhibit 14. Is this a picture that you took, Mr. Lewis?
My neighbor took it.
Okay. And does this picture that we're seeing accurately depict the entrance to the subject property?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what are we seeing in this picture?
That would be the start of the, on the edge of the cul-de-sac, that'd be the start of his driveway, I guess you could say. He has a key card, gate pass, and, wooden gates to get in. So, the vehicles will come down county line, into the cul-de-sac, into the private driveway. And
what-
that's what you're seeing there.
Yep. And what kind of vehicle are we seeing here?
It's a dump truck, single axle dump truck.
Take a look at Exhibit 15, please. Or do you know the company this one's affiliated with, Mr. Lewis?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm sure we could look at it somehow. I don't. I think that's the same company. Both of these pictures are the same company.
Okay, let's take a look at Exhibit 15.
But you'll actually hear these trucks sometimes dumping. You'll see them coming in and out, whether they have a big job going on locally, but you'll hear them come in, dump, come back out, in and out.
And that's, you said at all hours of the day and night, or when are they most commonly driving through?
It could be any time. They work weekends around their weather, around, their schedules. So usually you'll see 3 or 4 trucks come down and then one truck come out with three occupants in it.
Have you noticed a difference in frequency between the winter months and the spring and summer months?
I mean, I would say summer is more busy, but, they're definitely still active in the winter. They're keeping all their plow equipment and trailers and equipment still coming back and forth. The property's still maintained.
Can we take a look at Exhibit 15, please? Who took this picture, Mr. Lewis?
My neighbor,
And what is this picture depicting?
dump truck with, looks like it's concrete in the back.
In this picture, the truck's also sitting at that gate entrance, at the beginning of the driveway to the subject parcel.
Correct.
Okay. There's a couple pictures in the very back of the exhibit binder. If you could identify those pictures, please.
I think that's the curbscape that was mentioned.
Okay.
And a landscaper, you can see And that's what you'll be hearing is, you know, the trucks and trailers, you know, equipment coming by. These two pictures represent what's coming in and out.
Mr. Lewis, how else has this impacted you and your family?
I mean, it's not making it as safe. You know, Turnpike came through, you know, we're now a cul-de-sac, you know, dead end. It shouldn't would be just us neighbors. Now we're dealing with, you know, additional vehicles every day. You know, trucks, equipment, people you don't know, up and down our road.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for you, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Does the appellant have any questions? I would like to address that. Do you have any questions for him?
Okay, if there's no other questions for Mr. Lewis, then I'd like to call Mr. King.
Here or there.
You can stay right there, however, whatever you're comfortable doing. Okay. Good evening.
Hi,
Okay, Mr. King, you're the acting zoning officer for Cecil Township, is that right?
that's correct.
Okay. And how long have you acted in this position?
This is started my 4th week.
Okay. And this is a short-term assignment while the regular zoning officer is on a leave, is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. So you didn't issue the notice of violation, right?
I did not.
But have you familiarized yourself with the case file?
Yes.
Okay. Can we turn to Exhibit 10, please?
Okay.
Okay. And is this a copy of the notice of violation that was issued by the township zoning officer?
Yes, it is.
All right, and again, the subject parcel in this notice, as we've discussed tonight, is an R1 zoning district parcel, correct?
That is correct.
And the violations that are listed in here include violations of sections 406 and 902 of the Unified Development Ordinance here in Cecil. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And the language of 406 is listed there in the notice of violation. Are you able to say generally what that particular section requires?
Requires, I'm sorry, I don't,
Basically, what is section 406? It's relating to, as it relates to this case, occupancy permits?
occupancy permit, yeah. Basically required for any type of construction, alteration, et cetera. Sorry. Yeah,
Fair to say that you need an occupancy permit if you're going to occupy a building?
that's correct.
Okay, and if the building changes in use, you need an occupancy permit, fair enough?
That's correct.
Okay. And let's take a look at section 902 of the UDO at the very top of the second page. That section, it lists the types of uses that are allowed by right, by conditional use, and by special exception in the R1 zoning district.
Correct.
And those uses are listed there on page 2. The uses by right are farms, single-family detached dwellings, private accessory uses, home offices, and essential services, right?
Correct.
And as conditional uses, which would require someone to come before the Board of Supervisors to get approval, you could operate a personal care home, a daycare center, a house of worship, primary and secondary schools, communication facility, or a cluster housing development. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. And then as a special exception, which is a use that would require an applicant to come before this board, if you get approval, can do a home occupation, daycare, home, kennel, and a bed and breakfast establishment, correct?
Correct.
All right, and I'll just direct your attention to Exhibit 11. And if you could just identify what Exhibit 11 is.
Exhibit 11 is our Unified Development Ordinance. It was passed May of 2000.
Okay.
Supersedes.
And let's take a look at Exhibit 12, please. And these are just excerpts from a zoning ordinance, but can you identify which zoning ordinance Exhibit 12 shows?
Chapter 27. Section 401. 402.
Oh, I guess I'm asking in broader brushstrokes, is this the township zoning ordinance prior to the 2000 Unified Development Ordinance?
Yes, it is.
And this one was in effect as of 1975 and amended in 1988. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Okay. And under the former ordinance, again, which was enacted in 1975, the uses in the R1 zoning district are listed in this excerpt. Oh, before we go through those uses, Mr. King, is it your understanding that this parcel has always been zoned R1?
Always.
Okay.
Correct.
And if we take a look under the 1975 ordinance, starting on page 295 at the bottom,
Yep. Uses by right.
are the, yep, so these are uses by right in the R1 district.
Yep.
And if you could just tick those off for the record, please.
Sure. Land may be used, building and structures may be erected, altered, or used by right for the following purposes. 1, farm subject to section 909, single-family detached dwelling. 3, planned residential development subject to conditions in this chapter. 4, accessory uses. Only the following uses shall be permitted: customary residential accessory uses, swimming pools, private greenhouses located within the buildable area of the lot, minor garages, nameplates not exceeding 1 square foot in area. That's, and then we
Okay.
start with the conditional uses.
Yep, and under conditional uses in the R1 district, under the 1975 ordinance, I only see one there. What's that?
Personal care boarding homes.
Okay, and how about uses by special exception under that ordinance?
1, kennels. 2, home occupations. There's A through L.
And that's it for Maine?
Correct.
Okay,
2, there's area and bulk regulations, which continues on. Can we
Okay.
articulate that?
nope, we don't have to go through those. I just wanted to focus on the uses that were allowed under that ordinance.
Okay.
And I'd also, because of the time when this time period, this property was purchased, I'd also like to put into the record the ordinance prior to the 1975 ordinance, which was an ordinance enacted in 1965. That ordinance we only have in this lovely, old, handwritten version, book form, that's not very easy to copy and replicate. However, I did copy the R1 section of that ordinance, and I have a copy of that to share with you, and we can leave this here if the board wants to review any of the 1965 ordinance.
Thank you.
Which is the residential district uses. It is handwritten. I have looked at it, and I'm happy to go through it very quickly. In 1965, under the ordinance, the uses by right that were allowed in an R1 included single-family detached dwelling, churches, public, parochial, or private schools, public parks, municipal buildings, tilling of soil, signs, subject to some provisions, telephone exchange buildings, an electric substation, philanthropic institutions, radio station, accessory use, farming and agriculture, clubs, lodges, and fraternal organizations, golf course, country club, or similar, cemetery. I think that's it. Yes, that's it for uses by right. There are several conditional uses in an R1, the residential district, I should say, at that time, including group dwellings, conversion apartments, and home occupations. And that's all you had. Okay, Mr. King, you heard testimony this evening from Mr. Mazza and Mr. Lewis about activities that are taking place on the property, correct?
Correct.
From what you heard, in your opinion as a zoning officer, do some of the activities we heard about qualify as a contractor's yard?
Yes.
If you could take a look at Exhibit 11, please, in the definition section. Page 16.
Contractor's yard, any developed or vacant land used as a place of storage for a general contractor or tradesman, including the storage of construction equipment, material, and company vehicles.
Okay. Thank you. You also heard testimony about the rental of property as a storage garage for cars and other equipment this evening. In your opinion as acting zoning officer, does that qualify as a garage, public or commercial? And you can turn to the definition to help.
Principal or accessory building other than a private or storage garage used for parking or temporary storage of passenger vehicles.
And that definition differs from a garage, comma, private,
Yes,
which, when you read the definition, does not allow for more than one space being rented for parking to a person not a resident on the premises.
correct.
As acting zoning officer, Mr. King, do you understand that you need an occupancy permit to occupy any building?
Yes,
Okay. And I think we already looked at Section 406. If you look at Section 1805 of the zoning ordinance, that applies to pre-existing non-conforming uses. And even under Section 1805, if you were a pre-existing non-conforming use, and I'm not stating to this board that there is a pre-existing non-conforming use, but even if there were, you need an occupancy permit, correct?
correct.
Okay. Has any residential, I'm sorry, strike that. As acting zoning officer, do you appreciate that there's a difference between a residential occupancy permit and an occupancy permit for a barn or storage?
Yes, there's a difference.
And has any residential occupancy permit ever been issued for any of the buildings on the subject property?
No,
And you've looked through the township records and the file in this case, correct?
correct.
And other than Building B, which we talked about earlier, the storage barn, the township doesn't have any evidence of any other permits being issued for any buildings on this property, correct?
Correct. I've found no evidence showing other than what is presented.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, Mr. King.
Thanks.
Do you have any questions, sir, for Mr. King?
Okay. One more very short witness. I'd like to call Mr. Harold Ivory.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Ivory.
Good evening.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Harold Ivory Jr.
Okay, and Mr. Ivory, who are you affiliated with?
I'm the Cecil Township Building Code official.
Okay, thank you. And if you could just take a look in that book at Exhibit 7, page 3 of Exhibit 7. What is that we're looking at, Mr. Ivory?
It's a final inspection and occupancy
For what type of structure?
miscellaneous or accessory structure.
Okay, and in the application itself, under type of structure, what does it state? It's 5 lines down.
Pole barn?
Oh, are you on page 3?
I said pole barn. I'm sorry, it's.
I think he's on the wrong
storage
document there.
barn. Storage barn,
Storage barn, okay, that's the type of structure for this permit, correct?
correct.
Okay, and does that qualify as a permit for residential occupancy?
It does not.
Okay. What would need to have happened for human habitation to be permitted in Building B, which is the permit you're looking at?
Well, the structure would have to be renovated because it has to have bathrooms. It mentioned bathrooms. But there's other stuff like egress windows, and it would have to meet an energy requirement and room sizes. There's just various things to meet living quarters.
So there would need to be a conversion from a storage barn to a living quarters,
Correct.
and a permit would be required to convert it from a storage barn to living quarters, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Then you would need an occupancy permit once it gets final approval for living quarters.
Yes.
Okay. And just to be clear, that particular exhibit we were looking at is for the structure that we were calling Building B, just so we're all clear, which is different from Building D, which is where he was residing. But I just wanted you to explain that process so everyone was clear that even if you have a barn and you wanted to occupy it, there is a permitting process that someone must go through.
Correct, and that occupancy would have a designation on it, IRC, the year 2018 IRC, which stands for International Residential Code.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Ivory. That's all the questions I have. Okay. I don't have any witnesses, but I do have just a couple more documents that I wanted to enter into evidence. And actually, I apologize for that. I actually am going to have Mr. Ivory answer this question. That's correct. You're generally familiar with the on-lot sewage permitting process through Washington County.
Sure.
You heard some testimony today that because this property was 10 acres or exceeded 10 acres, that He didn't need a permit for a septic tank, is that, you heard that testimony?
Yes, there's an application that you apply for at the Washington County Sewage Council. One of them is a 10-acre exemption. One of the applications is a 10-acre exemption.
Okay, but to get that exemption, you actually have to apply for it, and then you get a permit showing the exemption?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And if you could just take a look at the exhibit. Oh, I think we're at, bless you, Kim.
I have 18.
Okay. If you could take a look at the document I just handed you, which we're going to call Exhibit 18. Is that generally the on-lot sewage permit procedure from Washington County?
I don't have it in my hand, but I've seen it when you handed it to me. It is the general application that
Okay.
comes through. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Ivory. That's all the questions I have. Okay, so I do not have any more witnesses, and I don't have any more documents on behalf of the township.
We're going to introduce exhibits. You're moving to introduce exhibits 1 through 15, which are tabbed, and then 16 is additional pictures. I have 17 as the 1965 Article 10 of the zoning code, and then 18, the on-lot sewage permit procedure document.
That's correct, and I would just say for the record, the entire 1965 ordinance is here for the board's review if they would like to look at it, but the portion I gave you was Article 10.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir, do you have any objections to those documents being introduced as evidence? Okay, so those are in.
Mr. Mazza, we're in receipt of your appeal. You've requested that Cecil Township rescind the cease and desist order on your property. And if you'll please come to the podium, you now bear the burden of showing that this is a legal non-conforming use. I'm somewhat sensitive to the fact that when you were questioned by Attorney Moore, she raised that very question, and I think your answer, and I quote, was, you do not have proof of non-conforming use, but we would welcome whatever testimony or evidence that you can provide us.
Well, I'd like to give you some backstory on this piece of property, how it evolved to the point to where it is now. This just didn't happen overnight. And what I'd like you to know is when my wife and I bought this piece of property 51 years ago, it was a blank slate. There was nothing there, trees, 15 head of beef cattle, and a 3-sided shed. Pete Schiaffoni came and took his 15 head of beef cattle away, and my wife Judy and I started planning our future. We wanted to build a house. We designed a house. We had an architect draw up the prints. It wasn't extreme. It was 1,700 square foot ranch. I built it. It took 2 years. It was a labor of love. We moved into that house. I took that 3-sided shed, fixed it up, added on, and we had our cows. We had 4, 5, 6 head of beef cattle all the time. I built a chicken coop. We had chickens. We had the garden. We were living the dream. This place was unbelievable. The view was beautiful, and I just kept building. I built fences. I built underground water lines, put the hydrants in, the gates, kept fixing and fixing. We were determined to put a road back through the woods into Cecil Township. It's 1,000 feet through the woods. This is no small task. Cut all the cordwood, hauled it back to the farm, split it, sold it, $50 a running cord. Finally got back to Cecil Township. Steve Borda come over with his high lift. He was a pillar of our community. He put the road in. It took 2 years. I had to pay as I go. Got the road put in, finally made it back to Cecil Township. Now I want to tell you something about this Cecil Township property. A lot of people in council here, and a lot of people in attendance may not know. 60-some years before my wife and I bought this property, Joe and Tony Sawinski, who we bought it from, told us that this used to be a 200-acre the Prosser hog farm. 200 acres, that's a big swath of property. They told us that they brought garbage from as far away as Pittsburgh and the surrounding area and dumped it on his piece of property in Cecil Township. Fed the garbage to the hogs, and everything else stayed there. Everything rotted away, separated from the glass and the cans. And by the time we bought the property, everything had rotted away except the glass. The whole piece of property covered with glass. Anybody on the west side of County Line Road that has a house, their backyard has glass in it, they know that. When they built those houses, they bulldozed the bulk of that glass down onto our property. And that's the property I wanted to reclaim and build this barn. And that's just what I did. Ron, he helped excavate up there when I built the last building. He'll tell you, nothing but glass. This could possibly be one of the worst pieces of property in Cecil, and I turned it into something. We built that barn. We were so excited about this progress we made as a young couple, having the barn, had the cows, had the chickens. We were rocking. Place for the hay, put the tractor. After a couple of years, I thought, this is a nice barn. I'd like to put a workshop in there. So let's build another building. My wife's a nurse. I'm welding on bridges. We're doing pretty good. We built another barn. Now, I didn't get anything done on the workshop. It's about the time my wife got sick. Well, this changed the whole nature of everything. So we had to make a drastic change. We got rid of the cows, got rid of the chickens. I suggested, why don't we convert this cattle barn I had into horses? I'll put some box stalls in there, and we'll rent that out so we have horses to keep the pastures down. And I got the fencing in, I got the infrastructure, the water, I got all that rocking and everything going good. All I had to do was convert the barn. I didn't hardly get started. Judy died. Now, this really changed things. This was devastating. To get past that situation in my life, I just kept working. And I put those box stalls in, and I got that little horse barn fixed up, and I rented it out. And the girls had their horses there, and I thought, hey, this is pretty nice. I got a little horse farm now. Didn't see that coming. So I added on to the horse farm, onto the horse barn. Now they got 10 horses. I built another building in Cecil Township. Got hay. These girls have horse trailers. They take up a lot of room. I got buildings to put the horse trailers in. I'm liking this. I built an outdoor riding ring. I added on to the horse barn. I got 16 horses now. I put living quarters in that lounge area of that barn. I got a girl living in there, training horses, boarding horses, training students. I got an indoor riding arena, one of the nicest I've ever seen. I built that. Same guy built the last 2 barns in Cecil Township. I'm living on a resort. This place is fantastic. The beautiful house I built, this beautiful horse farm. Now I'm old. I'm retired. I'm going to Florida for 6 months. I come home, I stay on this resort. Things are going great till the Pennsylvania Turnpike came along. They took everything I worked a lifetime for and kicked me to the curb. Now I got to start over in my 70s, like I said to Gretchen, and get back to where I was in my 40s and 50s. And this was really difficult to have to do. And I did it. And it took me 3 years, and in the process, I'm scrambling. I'm not thinking, boy, I better get an occupancy permit. I'm changing the usage of this building. I'm not an attorney. I quit school when I was 15 years old. I'm just trying to recover from what happened with the Turnpike. And I did. I built 3 buildings in Florida, and I rented out the buildings, the empty building. The horse trailers went, the hay went, the wood chips went, all my machinery. By this time, I acquired so much machinery. I got the tractors and the brush hogs and all this equipment. Sold all of that and rented the garages out. I don't think, boy, I better check with Cecil Township. I'm just trying to survive. And I did. Now, I'm non-conforming. Well, I come down here and apply for that application to ask you to help me rectify this situation. I need guidance and I need help. If I can't fix this situation, I have to ask everybody in those buildings to leave, and I have to sell that piece of property. After 51 years of ownership, being a resident and a property owner in Cecil Township, I've done nothing but improve a piece of property from the north side all the way to the south side. Nothing but improvements. I don't want my legacy, the biggest part of my legacy has been destroyed. They didn't just take my property, they bulldozed it into the valley. And that was the prime productive years of my life. And it's disappeared. Now I have some pictures. I'd like to show you those pictures, if I may. And then you don't have to ask me any questions because you already asked me just about everything. But I want help. I want you to tell me what I can do to rectify this situation. What is the resolution For me to get an occupancy permit, what do I have to do? I'm here to cooperate. I want to do whatever I can. And whatever I have to do to get this special exception, which I believe is tailor-made for a special exception. If this isn't a special exception, well, I don't know what is. So you tell me what I can and can't do and help me, and I think that's a reasonable request.
The pictures that you wish to show?
They're on the computer here. Huh? Oh, yeah. Need that.
It's very apparent from your remarks that you're very resourceful, you're very hardworking.
Oh, they never question my work. No question about that. I like to work. I'm not looking for a pat on the back to work, and I can't stop working. I like to think, I keep this property nice. I take pride in it. Even this piece I have left, there's my house. Yes, I built this house in 2 years. Every fence post, every board, everything you're gonna see, my hands have touched. I drove every nail in that house. I built a window frame, the hand-hewed barn beams, tongue and groove pine underneath 4-foot overhangs. I can reminisce about this forever. It's fantastic. Look at that. You look out these windows. I'll show you the view in the next couple of pictures. You can see that's a nice place to call home. The fun part is for me to see the fruits of my labor. The bad part is to see what they took from me. This is coming down my driveway. There's 300-foot of driveway from County Line Road before you get to this point. This is in the fall. Look across the field. This is the horse indoor riding ring with glass windows all the way around it. This is an aerial photograph. The house, the indoor arena, the horse barn, the outdoor rink. This is the buildings in Cecil Township. The road I put back there. There's an aerial view that I got off the internet. This is my workshop. How'd you like to walk away from that? That's a dream of every gearhead. I want to show you something. Yeah,
I think it's on repeat now, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah, you want to pause it?
that's all. I just want you to see what they took from me and how I got into this predicament. Those buildings in Cecil Township facilitated this horse farm. They supported this horse farm. Almost everything in those buildings was for this horse farm. Not everything. I am a landscaper, not a couple car collectors in there, but the bulk of the stuff was hay, wood chips, and cordwood, and my machinery, and trailers, horse trailers. My God, there's some horse trailers there. So,
With all due respect, we were all impacted by this, like, Catherine was fairly compensated. That's not why we're here. I'm very sorry that this is the decision. And, first year, commercial business being.
Could you just identify yourself, please? Did you get that?
I'd like to address what Jay Lewis said about this traffic. I know the situation he's referring to when he took the pictures of those dump trucks. That landscaper, that concrete curbscape, he called me up. He says, "Hey, I'm tearing out a driveway, and I have a couple other dump trucks, quite a few dump trucks. There's quite a few dump trucks of fill that'll be coming into the property." He knows I got surveillance cameras, and I have electric gates that open and close. Before you get into my property, you have to punch a code, and so nobody's flying down that driveway and nobody's flying out because it closes automatically. And that was a one-time deal. He's delivering, it was a delivery to the property. It's not all the time. The curbscape, he has 2 dump trucks. They're 1 ton. They're not big trucks. This traffic out of my property, it shouldn't even be mentioned. Before that cul-de-sac was put in, County Line Road was a throughway. Everybody from Cecil Township want to go to Bridgeville, want to go to Boyce Road, cut through County Line Road, and cut back the other way, day and night. No comparison to what it is now. I have a surveillance camera, points right at the top of my driveway. It sees the cul-de-sac. I can surf through that all day. I can surf through a whole day in 5 minutes, and you wait forever for a car to come around that cul-de-sac.
We would have no traffic if there was.
Well, you're not going to have no traffic. I mean, but you had twice as much traffic, 10 times as much.
You're getting compensated for this traffic. You're getting paid to allow this traffic come and go. We don't get any type of payment for that.
There's no traffic coming out of my property. That was a one-time deal.
Me and Dan pull the garbage cans, and we see it coming and going every
Oh,
time. I work
well,
with
what-
girls, I see it all day.
I know, but they go out and they work, and then they come back, and that's it.
And what about the sign that we have posted, talking to the entrance?
Excuse me, ma'am, I'm sorry, but if you would want, we will open it up to the
Yeah,
community to
I'm-
talk later.
Yeah.
But,
I
okay, thank you.
apologize.
Well, I don't think it's an issue, and if it is, we'll have to deal with it. If you can help me, I don't want to lose this piece of property. I'm been pushed down to 5 acres in Cecil Township, and I want to do whatever I have to maintain or get that with a special exception and an occupancy permit, whatever I have to do. I'm here to cooperate. I'm not here to battle Cecil Township zoning regulations. I'm hoping you can help me get it straightened out. I'm telling you, there is not much traffic on County Line Road. Compared to before that cul-de-sac was put in, it was a throughway. How can you compare a throughway day and night with a dead end? And a UPS truck comes down, and I surf ahead a little bit, and here comes an Amazon truck, and then here comes the mailman. And then once in a while, a truck or car comes in out of my place. My goodness, you couldn't have less traffic.
Okay, any other comments, Mr. Mazza?
No, thank you.
If
Thank you for your
if not, any questions from the board members?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I guess not necessarily to Mr. Mazza, but just in general, so. As I understand it, that this was a through road before the turnpike came in, correct? And so the access gate that you talked about, when was that put in?
Look, the Pennsylvania Turnpike put that new driveway in for me. They took my old driveway, which was a real long gravel road. They took that when they took the horse farm. And, well, that new driveway is only a few years old.
And is there a gate, though, there?
there's
I
a
mean, I drove up there,
double
but I
solar
couldn't
farm.
see too
Just
much.
took them off. I ordered new ones. I have brand-new metal gates coming. They're solar powered. They're always closed unless you punch a code in, and they open. How fast can you zoom in and out of that? I mean, you have to
And
stop.
they're at the edge of the road.
Very top of my driveway.
So like, they have to stage their
15
vehicles out
feet
there
from
till
the
they do it.
cul-de-sac, 20 feet from the cul-de-sac, 30, we're right there by at the mouth of the cul-de-sac.
Okay, so that's new as of the time when that driveway was put in.
I put those in shortly after. The reason being, everybody would come down a cul-de-sac to look at the construction of the highway, and they'd go down my driveway, and they'd look, and they'd turn around and leave. I said, man, I can't have that. So I put the gates and a fence. That's the reason I did it. But it's nice.
Okay.
It's really nice.
So if they come up there and they'll be like, are they waiting on the road there? Are they waiting on the road before they go in through the gate, or?
Cul-de-sac, and off of the cul-de-sac, there's plenty of room for a vehicle, and then there's the gates. There's a ton of room. It's like 25 feet from the cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Guessing, but there's plenty of room. You're not on the cul-de-sac.
And to the question about, though, so you're saying that before this was turned into a cul-de-sac, I guess the question to you all is, there was traffic in the form of these trucks that were coming to and from his property? Is it the same or it's different?
Yeah, it's a different entrance. He had a different, he could explain it. He had a different entrance. When we were, County Line Road, went from Morgan
What's that?
to Morgan. He had a different entrance.
Okay.
Which was south of that.
Okay, so, okay,
When the turnpike took us,
I
we're
understand.
in the cul-de-sac, so now his driveway is in the cul-de-sac.
Okay, so your entrance was in South Fayette before?
For simplicity, let's try to direct the questions to the
Okay,
witness.
that's
so
fine.
The
Yep.
stenographer can keep track.
And then we'll go to any comments within the audience.
Yep, okay, so your entrance to the property prior to the turnpike and the refactoring of that road was not on County Line Road, it was somewhere else?
It was on County Line Road. It was further down on the sharp bend. So whatever traffic was going in, they had to go past their house if they were coming from Cecil. You could come from Cecil or Washington Pike, Bridgeville. You could come from both directions. Look, it's not rocket science to think if you got a throughway, you're gonna have traffic going both directions day and night. When you cut it off, put a cul-de-sac, everything stops. Nobody comes down that road except the people live there, like 20 houses. And if I have a couple of people coming in and out of my place, it's not unreasonable, nowhere near what it used to be. You couldn't play on that road before that cul-de-sac was there. It was a road, just like here. It's a road. You cut it off, nobody goes down.
Okay, I understand.
Comparison.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Jones?
Yes. Hello. Okay. Quick question. You mentioned, I'm just trying to get clarification of timeline. You mentioned, I believe, Gordon and Pete rent from you, and you mentioned it's 20-something, 23.
23 years.
Okay, so did they rent from you prior to the construction of Building A and Building B?
He first rented a garage in Building C, one-car garage. Then he expanded into Building A, and that's where he is. But that's how, he was there forever. He was there while I had the horse farm.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, that's how he got to be there so long.
That
'Cause I
makes
did-
sense.
Even though everything I had was my equipment and that, I rented out a couple cars. There was a couple cars there and him, a landscaper.
Okay.
Before the turnpike took everything, then I rented everything.
Okay. Yeah, I just needed some clarification, so I
Sure.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Attorney Volts, any questions?
No, thanks.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. I don't know if it's for the solicitor or if it's maybe for Jack. I don't know. So my question is, I think it was mentioned that the current ordinance was established in 2000, the year 2000, and the prior ordinance that you noted, the first one in the exhibits is 1975 to 1988, and then you have the handwritten one, which was like 1965 to 1975, right? So between 1988 and the year 2000, are we thinking that we're not highlighting what the ordinance is at that time because it's not applicable because you don't think there's building during that time, or?
No, it's the same ordinance that you saw, which was in Exhibit 12.
Okay, so that's the one from
that-
1975.
Correct. So Exhibit 12 was enacted in 1977, and then it was amended in 1985, but that was in effect the entire time.
Okay. I thought you
Until
said-
2000.
Okay, I thought you said until 1988. I just wanted to clarify that that was the ordinance that was in place from 1975 until 2000, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any comments from the audience?
I have a question for
I think
Mr. Mazza when they're done.
Mr. Cassiola has a comment?
My name is Tom Cassiola. I just wanted to state for the record that it's never been true that a septic permit was not required. Prior to the property being purchased by Mr. Mazza, the township had control of and the DEP had controls of all on-lot permits that were issued. The township joined the Sanitation Council in 1996. So all the years prior, they had their own employee or their own contractor that did the work for them. And it's not true that a permit was not required if you own over 10 acres. If you got a permit and you failed the perk test, then you could consider, if you owned over 10 acres, if you had an alternate spot, you could show a system that could work on there. It would have to be approved that it's the best system for the type of ground you had, and then they could give a special exemption if you had over 10 acres.
And I think Attorney Moore had clarified during her presentation the fact that the 10 acres does not just automatically qualify you. An application is required and approval is required as a result of that
But
application.
she referred to the Washington County Sanitation
Yes.
Council, which she had the paperwork. At the time, whenever he said that system was put in, the township and the DEP would have had the jurisdiction over that, not the Sanitation Council. Then the second thing is, the township would have never issued an occupancy permit for any business down there, because the township does not permit a driveway through a commercial property or through residential property for commercial use. So it doesn't matter when and if he would have applied for an occupancy, it would not have been granted because that's residential property, and the occupancy would apparently been asking for a commercial use.
Right, his property is R1. I think Attorney Moore had comment?
I just wanted to put into evidence the township's on-lot septic system ordinance that Mr. Cassiola is referring to,
Thank you.
I believe, and this talks about on-lot sewage disposal systems regardless of the size of the lot or so. Article, that's the township's ordinance, which is different from the Washington County Sewage Council.
Okay. Any other comments from the audience?
Nicole Lewis, 201 County Line Road. I just wanted to see if we have in the exhibit the sign to the entrance of the property that says where the gate is. Do you have a picture that they could see for reference of the sign to the entrance of the property? We have listened that this is a very unfortunate situation, the devastation from the turnpike. I do feel, very sympathetic for Mr. Mazza that he did build this and had to go through all that. But there's rules and regulations for a reason. Now even hearing all this, now I'm more concerned about possibly my drinking water with this septic issue. The sign that you're looking at, my 3-year-old daughter just asked me about that. She says, Mom, what does that sign mean? So although we're seeing a picture of, a wholesome type property situation, that's not a friendly, neighborly sign that you would see in a residence where you live.
Copy of the image Mr. Lewis is showing the board, that's exhibit
20?
Yeah, for the record, yes, I did see it in person, so, as well, so.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I drove past and saw it in person, so to just corroborate that, yeah.
Okay, we'll enter that into evidence.
Any other comments, Attorney Moore?
No, I think you were clear, Mr. Mazza, that you did, I think I asked you this already, but in addition to not going through the process with Washington County Sewage, you did not apply for any permits with the township for any on-lot septic.
No, I didn't apply for any.
Okay, thank you.
But I didn't do it out of being malicious or anything. I was told, hey, I'm fine, whatever they say. They said, you don't need a permit? Or you have more than 10 acres? Yeah, I'm not gonna go on an investigative search. I'm just trying to get things done. I was really young then too. So, I just did anything I had to get by. And the same thing when the turnpike took the property. I started renting these buildings out. I didn't say, oh, wait a minute, I don't know if I can rent to you. You're a business. I don't know ordinances. I told you I can barely read. So I just went with what I thought was best to get out of the situation. I lost a lot of income. I lost a ton of money. And I recovered. I'm not crying the blues about that. What I want from this council is you to tell me how to solve this problem, or you can tell me, this isn't going to happen, Mr. Mazza. You're going to have to tell everybody to leave, and I'll have to sell that piece of property. There's plan B. I don't have another plan. So help me, sit down with me, have me come back again and explain to me you can do this, this, and this, and you can't do this, this, and this, and don't tell me about a sign at the top of my driveway or some traffic. Let's get serious. This is a big situation for me. I want some help.
Okay.
And I'm not ashamed to ask the council, after 51 years, I mean, you throw me a bone here. I need something. Gee whiz. It's not unreasonable.
Anything else, Attorney Moore?
Quick closing statement when we get to that point.
Okay. What we'd like to do is take a brief executive session, the zoning hearing board. Give us just a few minutes, and we'll be right back, and then hear closing. Or would you want to hear a closing statement first?
Let's let them give their statements first.
Okay, let's hear the closing statement first, and then we'll go into executive session, please.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to the board. And, the township is not unsympathetic to, the plight here of Mr. Mazza, but what is important to the township is that there's not an absolute violation of the zoning ordinance, which is what's happening. So a couple things I heard tonight. I heard, well, let me just apply for a special exception and do this. Well, under the ordinance, there are some things that are allowed via special exception, but none of them are what was described tonight. So you could do a kennel by special exception, in this zoning district, a home occupation or a daycare. And those are the only options available to you as a zoning board to allow a use. You can't allow use other than what's articulated as a special exception. So those are your options. And none of what we heard here tonight falls into any of those categories. So that's not an option for your consideration. What you are considering tonight is whether this notice of violation was appropriately issued or not. And I would ask you to consider looking at the ordinance, looking at the testimony you heard here today. When someone wants to claim that there has been a lawful pre-existing non-conforming use, that person actually has the burden to demonstrate that the use had been going on. At the time it started, it was lawful under the ordinance. What I showed you tonight were zoning ordinances going back to 1965. None of them allowed these kinds of activities on that property ever. So, Mr. Mazza, obviously, there's no way he can meet that burden. He fails to meet that burden, nor did he even demonstrate that the activities were going back that far. But out of an abundance of caution, I put in the other zoning ordinances. The testimony you heard tonight was this kind of contractor yard and rental of spaces was only really going on for the past 10 years as he testified. So you need not look further than the existing ordinance. That's the main issue here is the types of uses happening on this property are just not allowed under the zoning ordinance. As a secondary issue, there are no occupancy permits here. There's certainly not an occupancy permit for residential dwelling, which is what is taking place in Building D. And there are no other occupancy permits for the storage barns other than Building B, which is what you saw. And that was only for, a hay storage barn, which is clearly not what is happening in that particular building. So those are the two things before you, and the question you need to ask yourself is, given the zoning ordinance and the testimony that you heard, was this notice of violation properly issued and should be upheld? And on behalf of the township, I'd ask you to say that it was properly issued and it should be upheld. Thank you.
Thank you. I think despite the amount and the detail of the presentation and the information we've heard this evening, yes, what it boils down to very simply is we, as a zoning hearing board, either affirm or reverse the determination of the zoning officer. We'd like to take a brief recess for executive session, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Anything else, Mr. Mazza?
If you're going to tell me what I can't use these buildings for, could you maybe tell me what I can use them for to give me some options? Because these are enormous buildings. There has to be something that it can be used for. If you're going to tell me, well, you can't use them for this or that, come up with a solution for me. Help me out here a little bit.
Okay, maybe we can dovetail that response based on what our decision is.
On the property.
Remnant of my horse farm, which is Pennsylvania Turnpike Filter. So now I'm stuck with these 4 buildings.
who had our executive session. I would entertain a motion from any member of the zoning hearing board.
Yeah, so based upon what we've heard and what our consideration is, I move that we deny the appeal.
Deny and affirm the determination of the zoning officer.
And affirm, yes, correct.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Approved unanimously. I think what we'd encourage, Mr. Mazza, if you could maybe dialogue with Mr. King in regards to potential use, whether it's request for variance or rezoning or whatever helpful ways might be developed for continued use of the property. Would you care to comment on that, Jack, or is that basically in a nutshell what we're looking at?
I'd agree with that.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Chris, I guess you won't get paid because there's no signature. I need to give it to
Especially the longest meeting.
That's a no-go.
Did you get the brakes repaired? Oh, you got another car? Oh.
Take some time, there are people is like this now. Yeah, they usually do. I wonder if they have a dispute, if there's something incorrect about it. So things better go.